What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We've got Kamaru Usman, 18-1, defending his UFC Welterweight title versus Jorge Masvidal, 35 wins and 14 losses. Again, 18-1 versus 35 and 14. But I wouldn't let those records fool me into thinking a mismatch in skill or ability here. Now, this is champion Kamaru Usman's fourth title defense since winning the title versus Tyron Woodley back at UFC 235. This was March of 2019. He's defended it 3 times successfully versus Colby Covington via stoppage, 5th round TKO, versus Jorge Masvidal on very short notice. Gilbert Burns was supposed to be Usman's opponent. Within a week of the fight, Masvidal steps in, has only a few days to lose the weight to make 170, and then he loses to Usman via decision. And then Usman's third title defense was against Gilbert Burns, who he stopped via TKO in the 3rd round. So 2 out of 3 of these title defenses ended via stoppage. The only one that went the distance was Jorge Masvidal, which is kind of interesting because when Usman won the title versus Woodley, that one went the distance, and his 2 fights prior, which were his 2 biggest fights at the time, versus Damian Maia and RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, both of those fights went the 5-round distance. So out of Usman's last 6 fights, 5 of them went into the 5th round. So this guy is no stranger to the 5-rounder, to fighting at a high level for several minutes. Now, Jorge Masvidal is about as experienced a fighter in the UFC as you're going to get. You know, I told you his record already, so you know he's had like over 50 fights. He's been in several different organizations. He's competed in Strikeforce. You know, he fought for the title in Strikeforce, losing via decision to Gilbert Melendez. Masvidal's competed in Bellator, Astra, G-Force, even Bodog. That's how far back he goes. Remember Bodog? This was like in 2006, 2007. Now, Masvidal, first started making noise in those Kimbo Slice backyard brawls. You could pull up YouTube and look at Jorge Masvidal fighting somebody significantly bigger than him in the backyard and eventually winning that fight. So with the Miami culture, the backyard kind of dogfighting culture, he has the nickname Game Bread. And although it is true, he's about as game and about as dangerous as they come, you cannot overlook his technical prowess. He's about as good a boxer, kickboxer as you'll find in the UFC. Watch his fight versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone and look at how much the difference in class is showcased there. Masvidal is super technical and nuanced as well as explosive. So when you see him feinting and changing levels and doing other things to throw his opponent's timing off, his opponent's rhythm off, and kind of disguising the feints with the actual shots and then decking the opponent, he's about as good as it gets. I mean, it's no coincidence. I mean, it was a little bit of luck, but it wasn't coincidence that in his fight versus Ben Askren, a super wrestler turned MMA fighter, that he started on that run and he anticipated that being a reflexive wrestler like Askren is, that Askren would possibly dip either to go for a shot or just to defend himself. But he wouldn't for a second think that what's coming at him is going to be a launched knee. So Masvidal took that calculation into consideration and then ran at him and then just caught him perfectly. The rest is history. But you could also see Masvidal's technical abilities against Nate Diaz. Now, I've never thought that Nate Diaz was a true 170-pound fighter, but you could see the way Diaz is getting caught by somebody who's probably quicker than him, probably more explosive than him, and just a more all-around technical boxer, kickboxer in terms of the sweet science of it all. Hit and not get hit. So this was even evident in the first Usman versus Masvidal fight, because if you see early in that first round, it became quickly apparent, no. This isn't the type of fight you want to fight, Kamaru. You don't want to have a boxing, kickboxing match versus this guy. Work to your strong suits and make him have to endure your type of fight. eat up some of the minutes on the clock, and don't let this become the type of fight that Usman fought against Colby Covington, another wrestler. Masvidal is not Colby Covington when it comes to the stand-up. So that, coupled with the difficulties that Usman was having with Gilbert Burns, his last challenger, former longtime sparring partner and training partner, Gilbert Burns, Burns rocked and dropped Usman early in their fight. Usman had to clear out the cobwebs, buy some time, and then start getting that educated jab going, which the jab was largely the story of that fight. And then Usman turned things around and eventually dominated in the stand-up, which was surprising to many, because when Usman was coming along as a contender, working up the rankings, nobody fancied him a super highly gifted stand-up fighter. This guy was a wrestler who was kind of ground and pounding and kind of half wrestling, grappling people, pushing them up against the cage, and just kind of wearing on them, taking them back down, just kind of beating on them with a free hand. He wasn't somebody who was this like slick, boom, boom, combination puncher. None of that. Like, even against Woodley, he closed the distance against Woodley and made it his type of fight, draining Woodley's energy against the cage, dragging him back down, and just making it that quintessential Kamaru Usman type fight. And that's largely what he did to retain the title in his second title defense, the one against Jorge Masvidal. He ate up a lot of minutes on that clock just playing to his strengths. And again, this was a short notice opponent in Masvidal. So Masvidal had to drain all the weight. I do think that affected his performance. Even if you expect the same thing likely to occur in this second fight, you cannot assume that we got 100% Jorge Masvidal in that first fight. Now, it's also true that Usman had to kind of switch gears and prepare for a totally different opponent. Masvidal instead of Gilbert Burns. He, fought Gilbert Burns a fight later, but Masvidal, he had to totally, rearrange his strategy. He just started working with super trainer Trevor Whitman, so I think that synergy is still developing, but it seems to be evolving pretty rapidly, as evidenced in Usman's performance against Gilbert Burns. It seems like that trainer-student relationship is really starting to take a foothold, and we'll see how it continues to manifest. Now, even though Usman is a dog learning new tricks under the tutelage of Trevor Whitman, I wouldn't then say that means that that's how you should fight Jorge Masvidal. Your primary advantages, if you're Kamaru Usman, in the first fight versus Masvidal are still your primary advantages in the second fight. Now, if you have to pull out some of the stand-up, which I'm sure he will have to at some point, get behind the jab, but don't fight 3 minutes out of the first 5 minutes. Don't fight 3 minutes of the first round in the stand-up. Don't do that in the second round. Now, it is exhausting if you're going to try to wrestle a guy for the entirety of a 5-rounder. And that's not what I expect Usman to do. He doesn't wrestle in a way where it seems like he's draining himself in the same way that Curtis Blaydes apparently got drained versus Volkov in a win. Curtis Blaydes won the fight, but it looked like he just started wrestling way too early, and this was a 5-rounder, so by the end of it, he was just too fatigued to keep on doing what he was doing to have success, and he got caught up in a kickboxing moment where Volkov looked like he was hurting Blaydes and might even stop Blaydes. That doesn't appear to be the same type of wrestling that Usman employs. I don't think that he's draining as much energy minute by minute as some do. With that said, he's still going to have to work the right mix of wrestling versus stand-up against Masvidal. Now, Masvidal, even in the first fight, was dangerous in the first couple minutes of every round. So I look at a guy like Masvidal as being more dangerous in the first couple minutes, even in rounds 4 and 5, than he is in the last couple minutes of rounds 1 and 2. Because you get that minute to recover between rounds and then at least start the first minute or first 2 minutes of the next round kind of fresh, even if it is in the later rounds. Whereas in the final minute of any round, you're pretty much worn out by that time and you're just looking for that horn to sound so you can recover. Now, I expect Masvidal to have a pretty sophisticated game plan coming in here. I think that he feels that if he can keep this fight in the stand-up, that he could stop Usman. Usman, while having a very evolving stand-up game and a very underrated stand-up game, is not going to be on the same level as Masvidal, unless he turns some extremely major corner in his development and all of a sudden is like Wonder Boy Thompson in the stand-up. I don't expect that to be the case. Wonder Boy, by the way, is the last striker to beat Jorge Masvidal. But aside from a guy like Wonder Boy, the guys who give Masvidal problems are people who could keep on threatening the takedown. Luke Thomas of Morning Combat, one of the best MMA shows out there, likes to refer to it as spamming him with takedowns. I kind of like that phrase. But Demian Maia was able to control the tempo and where the fight with Masvidal took place, and was therefore able to more or less cruise to a decision win in a very important fight for Masvidal, because this was after Masvidal knocked out Jake Ellenberger and Donald Cerrone, Cowboy. So he was carrying a lot of momentum into that Maia fight, and then losing to Maia on the UFC 211 undercard. This was like in the middle of 2017. That was a big setback for Masvidal. And at that point, I thought, damn, it looks like Masvidal is kind of out of bullets in terms of, really making a run for a shot at the title. And then he lost his very next fight against Wonder Boy Thompson, late 2017. But then he caught fire in a fight with Darren Till that Darren Till was actually supposed to win. They were trying to build up a Darren Till versus Ben Askren super fight. But then the unexpected happened. Again, people thought that Till was going to beat Masvidal here. But Masvidal, after getting dropped in the first round and fighting a pretty even fight through the first round and a half, ends up dropping and stopping Darren Till in the middle of the second round. One punch knockout. It took Till a moment to fall. He kind of folded over and then fell back. It was a beautiful knockout. And again, that speaks to the level of Jorge Masvidal's stand-up. To drop Darren Till with one shot, yeah, that's some pretty heavy-duty stuff. And so that totally rerouted both of these fighters' trajectories and courses. All of a sudden, Darren Till's in recovery mode, and Jorge Masvidal then gets a fight with, at the time, super prospect for the UFC, Ben Askren. And that's when, after a bunch of trash talk between both of them, that's where he knocked Askren out in the first 5 seconds of the fight. All he did was run up, launch that flying knee, and I actually caught him with two heavy. These weren't even hammer fists. He got his whole body and torque into those two punches that Askren should not have had to take after the knee knockout. But that, along with the knockout of Darren Till, just has Masvidal's name ringing. And then that's when they set up the super BMF fight with him and Nate Diaz towards the end of 2019. And before that loss to Demian Maia for Masvidal, his last two losses were in 2016, 2015, and these were against Lawrence Larkin and Benson Henderson. So Masvidal, it has often been a take 2 steps forward, take a step back, take a couple steps forward, then another setback with another loss. It's been that type of a road for Masvidal in all of those different organizations. So that reality, coupled with Masvidal now being 36 years old, tells me that this is his last major shot at a UFC championship. This is his second crack at Kamaru. Again, you got to kind of put an asterisk by that first one because of the super short notice. Look, it's one thing if you get 4 weeks notice, even a couple weeks notice, let alone a month and a half notice or something. But a week's notice, you can't take too much away from that. So we're getting a fresh Jorge Masvidal for this one. And unless Kamaru Usman's pride takes over and he insists in making this a stand-up affair, I think that his strengths are still going to work for him here. He might mix up a little more of the stand-up and surprisingly catch Masvidal, but I'd be very surprised if he actually allows this to become a true kickboxing match with Jorge. I just don't think that would be wise. I don't even think Trevor Whitman would encourage that. Usman, I believe, is best served making this as uneventful and unexciting a fight as possible if he wants to keep his title. keep on spamming him with takedowns, keep on pushing him up against the cage and start doing foot stomps and, just doing all the things that people were, kind of criticizing you for doing in some of your wins in the past. Don't fight him like you fought Gilbert Burns. Don't fight him like you fought Colby Covington. Fight him like you fought Tyron Woodley or like you fought Jorge Masvidal the first time. And I think that that's what he's going to do. I think Masvidal is going to have his moments. And look, Masvidal can certainly knock Kamaru Usman out. He can stop him. If he catches him in an exchange, drops him, he's very sophisticated and knows how to finish you once you hit the floor. A couple hammer fists, it could be a wrap. But Usman has super surprised me with his survival skills. Now, Jorge says to Ariel Helwani that, he ain't Gilbert Burns, that he's watching this Burns versus Usman fight. He sees how badly Burns had Usman hurt, and he's just baffled by the fact that that Burns took his foot off the gas, and once Usman started turning the fight around, that he thinks Burns lost his fighting spirit in that moment and succumbed to the TKO victory. Jorge doesn't think that he would allow Usman to recover like that. But I think that the age differential here will negate some of the times where Jorge would want to put his foot on the gas, but will kind of be unable to, especially in rounds 3 through 5, if Usman really starts turning up the volume. Not the volume in punches and kicks, but the energy volume, trying to drain Masvidal of his energy. Now, even with the short notice, Usman was unable to finish Masvidal. I wouldn't rule out a Usman stoppage of Masvidal in this fight, but I just think it's more likely that we get the same type of result, and that would be Usman via decision over Masvidal. I would say, 4 rounds to 1, maybe 3 to 2, but for Masvidal to win a round versus Usman would suggest that he hurt Usman at some point. Because the last time Jorge Masvidal won a fight via, say, submission was versus Michael Chiesa back in 2013. That was Masvidal's second fight in the UFC. He was just coming from Strikeforce, and he beat Michael Chiesa via Darce choke like 8 years ago. So I don't expect him to submit Kamaru Usman. And I have trouble seeing him win a decision because I just think that if he's winning the fight, that at some point he's probably going to stop Usman unless there's some way that Masvidal is able to keep the fight in a stand-up and just win a technical tit-for-tat type of boxing, kickboxing match and outpoint Usman without stopping him and winning a decision that way. That's possible as well. That is probably the second most likely scenario next to Usman via decision. Even though you'd have to say that maybe Masvidal via stoppage is more likely than Masvidal via decision. But I'm not quite sure about that. Again, Usman has shown an ability to survive. And, heading into the 5th round, him versus Colby was arguably 2-2 or anything next to that. 2-2. It could have been 3-1 either way. Or could have been 2-2 going into the 5th round. But again, I don't expect Usman to want to voluntarily fight Masvidal in the stand-up the way that he allowed the fight versus Colby to materialize. So I'm going Usman via decision here. But I damn sure want to see it. And I'm interested in seeing what a fully trained and prepared Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman look like in this clash, because Masvidal knows that this is his last shot at a title as well. So the stakes are high right here. I can't wait. But yeah, let me know what you think about this championship fight. This UFC 261 card is stacked too. The other title fights between Shevchenko and Jessica Andrade and Weili Zhang versus Rose Namajunas. This is going to be a good one. But yeah, let me know what you think about the main event, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal 2. And please, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.